now is the integration of Jenkins with Git, Maven, Nexus, Tomcat, and Synapse. Then email notifications, right? This is what we've accomplished. Now, when we did this integration, the build, all the build that we did, like Maven build and all that, all the processes, all the jobs ran on Jenkins server. Remember, for us to do this, we created Jenkins server, then Maven is inside Jenkins server. Then we integrated all these other servers, right? So running these jobs, all the jobs runs in Jenkins. So there's a disadvantage to that. Meaning is if your Jenkins servers goes down, every other thing goes down. If there's a security attack, if a malicious attack on your Jenkins, it means you cannot run your jobs. If anything happens to Jenkins server, it goes down, right? Jenkins server can be overloaded as well. If you're running a big job, if there's a big job that you're running, right, that takes a lot of capacity, memories, and all that, it would lock up your Jenkins, right? So in small jobs, small applications, it's okay to do it the way we do it, right? Just run everything on Jenkins. But if you have a large job that you want to run, it would probably occupy all the memory capacities. And especially if you're putting your Jenkins in production, if it's a production line, you need what is called high availability. How do you do high availability? Now, this is a strategy of doing high availability. So you do you decentralize where your jobs are built. In other words, you don't use Jenkins to do the build. So now it becomes what traditionally is called Jenkins slave architecture, meaning that you have a Jenkins as a master, then you have slave servers that do the job while Jenkins manages everything that's going on. So that takes us to this, right? So traditionally it used to be called master slaves, right? But these slaves are no more called slaves. They call them agents or call them nodes, right? In Jenkins 2 is actually nodes, right? So you call this node 1, node 2. You can put as many servers as you want here, as many as you want here. And these servers run on what is called executors. Executors are nothing but how your jobs are being scheduled. So you can have executor 1, executor 2. So you have what is called executors. All right. Let me style this. Oh, it was nice styling. Okay. All right. So call it executor. You can assign the executors that you can put as many executors as you want. Executors is nothing other than how you schedule your job. Now I'm scheduling jobs for executor 1. After that, executor 2. If there's space, executor 3, executor 4. It's more or less scheduling that is done internally within your nodes. So these are nodes, right? Or you can call it agents, or you can call in Jenkins 2. They are all called nodes, right? So you can call it nodes. Okay. So this is assuming this is the Jenkins. How does your Jenkins connect with the other nodes, right? These are other instances that you've created. How does it connect? It connects through SSH plugin, right? In other words, it's your SSH plugin, which is your private key pairs, right? Is what you use in connecting between your master server and your nodes. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you today. So that's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to create nodes, a different node. I already have one, so I'll create another one. So you can create as many as 6 nodes to run on one master server. So I'm going to create another one, show you step by step how to create it, and also show you how you connect it to, you actually do the configuration, which includes setting up this, so that setting up your master to recognize your slave or your node. So one thing you should realize is this. In Jenkins, you have all, you have when you're doing the installation, you install Jenkins, you install Java in here. But when you're connected to your slave or your nodes, the only thing that you have to install is Java. You don't need to install Maven or anything in here, right? You don't need to install Jenkins in here. But the miracle is this. Though you've not installed Jenkins in here, you've not installed Maven in here. Remember, Maven, once you install Jenkins here, it also has Maven. This would build your application just like you're running it here. That's the beauty about this. All you need to, what your slave needs, or your agents or nodes, whatever you want to call it, needs is Java, right? Java, right? Once you install the Java, you're able to run your jobs on these other servers. So that's actually the master slave architecture that is traditionally used in Jenkins. All right. Any question? Is it understood? Right. Again, what we've been doing is running Jenkins here. Now we're going to decentralize that duty, give some of the jobs to the nodes. Okay. I'll show you how to do that. Right. Do the configuration. So let's get back to, first of all, we have to create a server. I created one server here called node 1, right? We're going to use this. Let me create another one so I can show you how to use it. So go to launch. I want to call it node 2. Right. You also remember how to set up your instances, right? Then Red Hat, I'll select Red Hat. I'll use the T2 micro, just a small one. I'll use my same key pair. What's my key pair? Class key, that's the one that I like using. I'll select that. If you don't have one, you can create a new key pair if you want. SSH traffic, I need port 22 opened, and that's all I need. And what I can also do is I need to install Java in this server, and I can install Java using what is called my user data. I think I've shown you guys how to do this directly without you going to do, after installation, you go and do install Java. You can do it here using your user data. See what I did? I came to advanced details. I select advanced details, and the user data here, right? I can put my script in here for the installation. So if I go back to my, right, this is my package manager, Jenkins installation. All I need is to install Java. So I can just copy just this code because this is the only thing that I need, right? I can copy this script, come back here. So what I do is exclamation shebang, right? Shebang, right? This automatically, so let's change this to, I call this node 2, right? So my username, my host name is node 2. All I do it here is create a host name called host 2, node 2 rather. Then I install my unzip, wget, tree, git. I don't really need to do all this, but just let's leave it there. Then I do a yum install. I install my Java. Just copy that and put on your user data. And you can also do any other installation this way. All the scripts, all this long script, you can copy it and paste here. And when your instance is being launched, it's going to do the installation automatically for you. Okay, so I can click launch instance. Okay, in the background, before it fully comes to life, node 2 is going to go ahead behind the scene or under the hood. Oh, I had another node 2 here, but that's not the one. I stopped this one. That's not the one I'm looking for. So behind the scene is going to do that installation for you. Once it's complete, we should see it here, right? So you have a node 2 running. Okay, so we have a node 2 running. Okay, so now that we have node 2 running, we can go back. Let's grab the IP address real quick. This is the IP address. Let me copy it just in case I need it. Okay. So let's get back to our Jenkins. Now, how do we integrate our node 2, right? How do we actually do this? This is our node 2 now. How do we integrate our node 2 to Jenkins master? Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. So if you go back to your dashboard, always go back to dashboard, and to manage Jenkins, you just go to Jenkins, manage Jenkins. You want to do the management, just remember, always go back to your dashboard. Now your configuration, if you want to start anything, start with manage Jenkins, right? So go to manage Jenkins. In manage Jenkins, if you scroll down, or you see where it says nodes and cloud, add, remove, control, monitor various nodes that Jenkins run, okay? Remember when we're doing security, we had it here in security system. Where is it? Somewhere here. Can't find it. Can you? Security is right here, right? If you want to configure your credentials, you have credentials here. You have tools, so you want to configure tools, right? So Manage Jenkins has all the modules that you can use to do the configuration. In this case, we're looking for node and cloud. So you select node and cloud. It will take you to this UI. Okay. So you see here, I configured node 1, right? So I want to configure node 2 now. So you see where it says new node, you select new node. And I want to call this node 2. Okay. Select permanent agent. Add a plain permanent agents to Jenkins. This is called permanent because Jenkins doesn't provide higher level of integration with these agents, such as dynamic provisioning. Select this type if no other agent types applies. Okay, so we select this. And I can copy existing nodes, right, which is node 1. See node 1. And it will have everything that I have in node 1. So if you want to speed it up, right, you can do the same thing. You can just do copy, and it will do that. But let's go back. Let's assume you've not had any node running, right? Let's start from scratch. So you do permanent node and you hit create. So create will take you to this interface, right? In this interface, you have node 2. You can put a description here if you want to. Then now we have the remote root directory. Your remote root directory should be your EC2. So EC2 user, your EC2 user. Right. But in that EC2 user, the name of your node that you want is node 1. And your EC2 user is in the home directory. So you put it this way. Home, my name EC2 user is because you're using Red Hat, and the name of your node is node 1, right? So home EC2 user / node 1. That's your remote root directory, right? So where you have the label, just leave the label. You can label anything. Label is just a name that you call it. We already call it, so it's going to assume this name, right? So it's just a label, right? So the next thing is usage. We'll keep use this node as much as possible, right? Let's see if it has any other option, right? You have another option here, only build jobs with level expression matching this node. So, but we'll keep it, use this node as much as possible. Okay. So the next thing is launch method, right? So in a launch method, we'll want to launch agents via SSH, right? That goes back to the diagram that we had here, right? Because we want to connect using SSH plugin. Okay. So it gives us this. What's the host, right? What is the host? So the host is your IP address that I copied, which is the IP address of your node that we created. Okay. Once you do that, it's going to ask you for your credentials. Okay. Now you have to watch me on this one. Now we don't have the credentials. How do we do the connection, right? How does our main master server talks to the slave server, making it a slave architecture? We're using a key pair. So you have this key pair that you created. Remember, we had the key pair that we created. So that is going to come handy, right? So for us to do this connection, we're connecting through SSH. So you have to add those credentials. So we have to create a credentials in this case. So when you click add credentials, you keep it at global credentials, right? Then we go to kind. When we get to kind, what we want to use is SSH username and private key. So your SSH username is EC2 user, and you have to add your private key. So you select that, right? In this case, it's asked for ID description. All we're interested here is the username. In this username, you can put EC2 user because that's our Red Hat username, right? And we also need the private key, right? So you select enter directly the private key. So we can go and grab a private key and enter it here. So let's do that. So we go to your download folder on your Windows. If you go to your download folder, okay, you see I'm looking for class key, which is my key pair. Let me do a search here. Class key .pem. Where did it go? Right here. So you open it up for me. So this is my private key. So I would edit, select all, right, and copy this. I copy my private key. I don't need this anymore. Right. Then I want to store this directly here. So I click add. It opens this up for me. So I'll paste my entire private key in there. And I'm done. I click add. Okay. So now I can select my credentials now, which is EC2 user. So I have it here. Do the selection. After you add, remember to select, right? Do the drop down, use the drop down arrow and click and select that. I've done it 3 times, so that's why you're seeing it appears 3 times, right? Okay. So once you do that, you have host key verification strategy. So what do you use for your host key verification strategy? You do a drop down. You want to do manually trusted key verification strategy. You select that, right? So once you're done with that availability, just keep this agent online as much as possible. You leave it there. Once you're done with that, go ahead and do save. So, right, once you click add, so it shows you here. If there is no connection, if the connection is, right, look at it. My connection is offline. So it's not connected for some reason. It gives me an X here. So meaning there's a problem. Okay. Which I do not know what the problem is. It says it's offline. Let me refresh this. Right. It gives me an X here. Right. So we can go back. Let's go back. This agent is offline because Jenkins fails to launch the agent process. Let's look at the log. Right. Java not found. So our Java did not install. Right. If you go to, you see that it gives you a clue here what the problem is. So our Java did not install properly. So what we failed to do, it did not recognize our user data. So what we can do is you can go back to you have your IP address right here. We copy the IP address, then go to mobile extend. Go back to your mobile extend, right? In your mobile extend, we want to SSH into this server. So EC2 user. Okay, class key, right? You have SSH into that server now, okay? And what you want to do is to install Java, okay? So you can simply use just this command. Press it twice. Sudo yum install Java 17, right? You hit enter. Okay, and this should install your Java for you. And where did I get that script? Go back to your installation script, the Jenkins installation script. With that Jenkins installation script, you'll see the install Java line. This sudo yum install Java 17 open JDK. Right. It's still installing. So we did the installation, right? We did that installation, and I think we're back in business, right? See, the X is out now. It's relaunched at node 2, and the X is because the problem is the Java was not installed, right? Now we installed the Java. That was the only problem we had, and we've had our connections. So we have these 2 nodes connected. So this and this are now connected now. Okay. So now after that, so what do? If you want to run a freestyle project, let's go back and see a freestyle project. This time we don't want to do our build in Jenkins server. We want to do it in either node 1 or node 2, or whichever node that you want to do run the job. So we go back to, let's get back to our dashboard. Where did we have a scripted pipeline? Let me see. I think at Chase Bank had a scripted pipeline. So this is, go to configure. No, not a scripted pipeline. It's a freestyle pipe, right? So you come here to your freestyle project. You see, it says restrict where this project can be run, right? This is where you use this this option. If you select it, it will tell you label expression, right? So we want to run it in either node 1 or node 2. Okay. So in this case, let's say node 2. So it's no agents matches this expression. Did you mean node 1 instead? We have node 2. Let me see. Okay, let's try node 1. So node 1, you have taken node 1, but node 2 is running too. Okay, so this is where you select which node you want to run this. So you have node 1. Okay, you select node 1. We already configure all this, right? And now when you go to, you click apply save. Now when you're running this job now, right? So let's look at this. Okay, so building, see where node is running? Building remotely on node 1 in workspace. This is a workspace, right, that we created. The recommended Git tool is none. No credential specified. We didn't specify, but it's cloning a Git repository. So you see it's running a job, but it's not running a job in Jenkins server. It's running the job on node 1 server, right? So you can select where it can be run, okay? Let's see, okay. Now a job has run and it's a success. Okay? So now it takes the burden that you put on Jenkins server, it alleviates some of that burden. Now it takes it to another server, right? You can run it on another server now. It comes back to this. Now, remember, you did not install Maven here. You did not install Jenkins here. All you install here is Java. But the magic that's going on here is Jenkins is so smart that even when the plugins are not here, you don't have any plugins here. The only plugins that you have is an SSH plugin, right? The SSH plugin would migrate all the installation you had here and move them to your nodes, and your nodes would do the job, will run the job, right? And within this job, you have what is called executors. Executors schedule the job. So if they ask you in a master slave architecture, what actually runs the job? The agents that runs the jobs are called executors, right? It's called executors, and you can state how many executors that you need to run the job, either 5, 2, or whatever numbers. If you don't state any, it's still going to schedule the executor and run for you. Okay, so that's a master slave architecture whereby you have a node as a slave and you have the master that manages the slave. So that's for a freestyle project. Now, what if you have a scripted project? Like we have a scripted project. Let's see, where is that scripted project? They would explicitly call it explicit scripted project, right? Like we have here be a scripted project, right? Now, if we want to run this project on maybe node 1 or node 2, let me see if we can run it on node 2. How do you go about it, right? Go back to your configure, because configure is how you do the configuration for your scripted project to run. On your configure, so you can go back to your script. So this is a script, and this is the node. Where do you want this to run? Okay, and you can come here where you have node, and let's say we have node 1, right? You type it in there, node 1. Okay, let's see if this works. You save, right? Let's run this project and see what happens. Okay, it has started. Let me see. Let me bring this and see where this project is running. It's running on node 1. Okay, so this project is running on node 1. It's no more running in a Jenkins server. It's running on a node 1 server. Okay, so it's going through. Let me view the pipeline. These are the pipeline steps, right? It gives you pipeline steps, the number of seconds and the time that it used to run all this. These are console output. There you go back to what's my project, scripted project. This is the one we're running, right? Is this the project that we just ran? No, not this one. This is the one we're running. Okay. So it goes to stops ask for approval. I give it the approval. And we are deployed a freestyle project. We run it with a scripted project. Now let's run with one of our pipeline projects. Okay. I think I have it here already. Let's look at the configuration of this one. Okay. So in this case, you see where you have the agents, right? The way you label it is you put a label, right? Ordinary, it will be agents any, right? If you're not using a different server, right? In this case, it's not any. So you take out the any and you put a label, and in quote, you put this node 1 in here, right? So once you do that, you can save it. Now let's run it and see what happens. Okay. Okay, our job has started. Let's see where this is running. All right, it's running on node 1. So that's a pipeline projects running on node 1, right? And it goes on and on and on and on. Right, it's running properly. It clones, builds, does the test, upload the artifact. We'll soon upload the artifacts. It's going to test. Test here is the SonarKube pipeline. Now it's uploading the artifacts. Then it's going to pause and ask me to abort or approve. So I say proceed. And it does the deployment to production. Okay. So the pipeline is running well. So I've shown you how to do the integration of the master slave. And I've showed you how to run it on using freestyle project, scripted project, and declarative pipeline project. Really quick, let me share some things with you before we call it a day. And I think it's on the pipeline. Let's go back to the pipeline. I keep adding different, sorry, I keep adding different notes on this. So I have a lot for you to digest on Jenkins. I'm going to post this today so you can have this note and read it. Okay, so what I added was the flow. So when we're writing these codes, right? I showed you yesterday how to use the if and if else statement, and also how to use the when statement, right? When we're writing a code, right? You can use that on your code depending on what you want to do, right? Another thing I wanted to show you is the flow control. Now you can control your flow. Remember when we wrote one of our programs, the pipeline program, we put a time for approval, right? We put a wait time for approval. Yeah, you can put that. That's what is called timeout, right? So one of the flow control is timeout. Timeout is when you say, okay, wait, let's inspect what's going on, or you can use it to do anything. Let's inspect the program, see if it's working the way we designed it to work. Are all the functions working well? Probably the QA can do a test can do unit test or functional test or regression test or whatever kind of test they want to do before they give approval. So that's timeout, right? That's the flow control 1. Flow control 2 is retry. The retry closure wraps codes in a step that retries the process n times if an exception occurs, right? So you can put it, if there's any exception, you can put retry and it will run the code again. If the retry limit is reached, and you can put a limit, how many times you want it to retry, like 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. So if the retry limit is reached and an exception occurs, then before you continue, you can put a sleep, right? The sleep time will stop whatever is going on and allow the process that you need to go, because this process probably are running in parallel, right? Running in parallel, you don't want it to be too fast. If it goes too fast, the installation is not going to complete. So you're telling him wait for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, all right? For that 5 minutes, your flow, your job will stop and wait until that installation is complete or whatever you want it to do to complete, right? If it's maybe you have a model to do a scanning, right, to check if there's any vulnerability on your pipeline, right? That thing would go on, right, undisrupted for that period of time, 5 minutes, before it continues. So you put a sleep time, right? Another flow control that you have is wait. until, as you might guess, this step causes processing to wait until something happens. The something in this case is the closure returning true. If the processing in the block returns false, then this step waits a bit longer and tries again. Any exception thrown in the processing causes the step to exit immediately and throws, it's just a wait time, right? And this is how you write it, wait until, right? Wait until, so right, this is how you write it, wait until something happens, until what happens, right? So you can include that in your pipeline. Okay, one other thing I wanted to show you guys is security. Now, how do you secure your Jenkins? So Jenkins security, how would you secure your server? So one thing that you can do is to put what is called a proxy server, right? I know we've got servers. I wanted to take time to teach you about web servers that, for example, Jenkins server that you can use as a proxy. So what happens is instead of you having your users to, maybe I should demonstrate this. I should demonstrate this real quick. Hold on. So, for example, you have your server right here, right? And traffic is coming into your server. This is the traffic that comes directly into your server, right? And this, let's call this your Jenkins server. Let's assume this is your Jenkins server, or any other server that you use, as a matter of fact, because this is the Jenkins server. You have, for example, this is you have your VPC, and this is in your private network, right? You don't want, this is traffic coming in. You don't want traffic. Mostly, you don't want people coming directly, right? Coming directly into your Jenkins server, right? You don't want people coming directly into your Jenkins server because it could be a middleman and they can attack your server, right? Instead of your users coming into your server directly, you can put something in between. Otherwise, you can put a proxy, right? You can put a proxy, right, in here, like, for example, a Nginx proxy. So in that case, anyone that wants to talk to your Jenkins server will first of all talk to your proxy server, and your proxy server would now talk to Jenkins. So you have another level of protection, right? So if there any malicious attack that is coming in, now it's not going to attack your server. So your server is not going to be down. It's going to attack your proxy server, right? And your proxy server usually has what they call a WAF, right? That's a firewall. That's a web application firewall. That's a web application firewall that checks for any SQL injection. It checks for vulnerabilities. It checks for site scripting, right? It looks at your headers and see if there's any malicious thing in your header files on the web and all that. It does all that. It takes into consideration everything that has to do with OWASP top 10. If you do DevSecOps, you'll understand that OWASP top 10 is the body that looks at all the malicious attack, all the hackers' strategy to attack web servers, right? That's called OWASP top 10. And these are, they put them in what they call regulations, OWASP top 10. These are the top 10 things that you need to look at all the time, right? So the WAF, like a Nginx WAF, protects you against those OWASP top 10, right? So it will protect any intruder that is coming to affect your Jenkins server, right? So this is just a demonstration on how one way that you can protect your server. Another way to do this is to change the port, right? Everybody knows Jenkins port is port 8080, right? Is it 8080 or 9000? What's Jenkins port? 8080, right? Snappy is 9000, right? Okay, so everybody knows that. Yeah. So if I'm a hacker and I know you're running Jenkins and I really want to attack you, right? So what I'm going to do is call a brute force attack. I'm going to send a brute force attack, and I already know your port. What I don't know is your username and password, right? So what I can do is I can, with a brute force attack, I can send continuous traffic to your server. Now, when I'm sending those continuous traffic, I'm trying to log in, coming with different password, username and password, right? Over and over and over and over and over again, because I already have the port. So now I know the port, but I don't know the username. I don't know the password. I can simulate a number of words, use A to Z, number 1 to 100 or so, or 1 to 10. I know the characters already. So what I do is I simulate the numbers, the characters, the alphabet, put it in a simulation, and it keeps changing, right? And it is going to attack the port, right? And once mix and match matches your username and password, right? I gain access into your server. Now I can take control of your server, right? Okay, so those are some of the techniques that hackers use to hack into the system, right? So one thing you want to do is you don't want to have them to know what your port number is, right? At least give them something to work on. Let them not only figure out the username and password, right? Maybe you carelessly leave your password in your computer and you're able to retrieve it, right? But now they cannot figure out the port number because you have changed the port number. Now they have to figure out what the port number is. Yeah. Is it 8080? Is it 8015? Is it 8020? Right. So they have to figure that out. Without figuring out what the port number to attack, they cannot attack your server. So that's another way, changing the default settings port number. Then we have what we call the RBAC access control, right? Where you can only give least privilege, right? For example, the DevOps only need to do a certain kind of things. The DevOps engineers probably are the administrators, so they have access to everything, read, write, updates. Now, the developers, you give them only the read access. They can only read what's going on in the Jenkins servers. They cannot build, but they can read the outcome or the result of the build, right? You give people the least privileges. Then the managers, you can only give them read permission. The manager cannot do. Then the lead, right? You can give the lead developer access to read and write, right? And approve. You can do all that using the RBAC system, right? Then the LDAP system integration is the integration of all the people in your organization into one database. And that database also has read access control, whereby it gives people least privileges depending on what organizations they are. The people that are in development, people in production, people in QA, you give them different access control. Of course, when you Jenkins 2, before the traditional Jenkins didn't used to have any credentials. You just log in and you log in. Now, the new Jenkins, which is Jenkins 2 that we're studying right now, you need to use a credential. That takes us back to the question that David asked. So when you're installing your Jenkins, it's going to ask you for your first name, last name, email address, then your username and password, right? You cannot get into Jenkins without your username and password. So that's a credential. And we already showed you how you can get into your Manage Jenkins and go to security, right? Remember last time that we did that, we changed the admin and we could not log back into our Jenkins, right? You can do the same thing. That's a way of you giving other people access into Jenkins, depending on the role they play. All right, so this is where you enable the security anyways, in Manage Jenkins. You can go there and enable that security. So those are some of the ways that you can create security around your Jenkins. Sometimes it comes in an interview. How do you secure your Jenkins server, right? These are some of the different things that you want to talk about. First, you talk about a proxy, talk about changing the default settings port, talk about having RBAC read access control, RBAC, then talk about the LDAP system integration and all that, and making sure that you give least privileges to the people that needs to use Jenkins. So those are some of the things that I wanted to share with you about Jenkins security.